So we will call the regular meeting of the Darien Parks and Recreation Commission to order. It is Wednesday, November 17th at 7:37. First order of business is we have two sets of minutes to approve. The first are the minutes from our October 20th regular meeting. Do we have any proposed changes from the group? All right. Kathy, come on. Come on.
I wasn't there. I can't change anything.
Anybody else? Susan, Cara? No. Okay. All right. It's always me. It's always me.
Yeah.
Okay. The first thing I noticed right at the top is it says that the meeting was called to order at 7 p.m., which I'm sure is not correct.
When I'm looking at the recording, I can't see the real time, so I didn't know what exact minute you started it.
Well, it wouldn't have been 7 at best. It would have been 7:30 because we don't start at 7.
Oh, sorry.
So
I'll do 7:30.
7 p.m. I was probably shoveling down dinner, so it definitely was not 7. And then on page 2, under getting some background noise. I hear a gentleman in the background. If you could put yourself on mute, please. Thank you. Standards of care document. The second line, it says the intention would be to have a document draft they. I would rather than they, Jamie, have it rather say just the commission. Just be more specific. That the commission can agree, be shared. And then on page 4, there's a big chunky paragraph on the top half of the page. There's a line that starts with the dollar amount $716,000. And then it says the commission discussed whether to add another line item for trees to address the invasive. I don't think it was for trees. I think it was just another line item to address the invasives.
Okay.
I don't think the trees belongs in there. And that's all I had.
Okay.
Anybody else with anything?
Yeah.
Nope. Okay. Then we can take a motion to approve the minutes with the noted changes.
I so move.
Thank you, Mary Louise. Second, Susan. Okay. Jamie, please roll call.
Lori?
Yes.
Cara? Kathy?
Yes.
Tiara is not on, correct?
Not to our knowledge.
Okay. Janet?
We have Janet. Okay.
DVD on Janet? Okay. And Sarah?
Yes.
That's everybody.
Okay. Great. Thank you. No, thank you. And next we have the minutes of our special meeting of October 30th, which are the park walking tour. And I outsmarted myself because I'm an anti-print person. So I didn't print them thinking, well, I wrote them, so I know what's in them. But of course now I don't have them in front of me. So I did outwit myself a bit. But Jamie, I assume you have them.
Yes, ma'am.
So if there's proposed changes, Jamie can take note.
Lori, I couldn't find anything.
Oh,
I couldn't find anything. They seem to be exactly what we talked about. So
okay, good. Thank you.
So.
Anybody else? I was scribbling in the rain, so scribbling and umbrellaing, and took a while to decipher my own notes, but I think I got there. So, all right, everybody's good with them? Okay, super. Okay, then again,
Any changes on yours?
sorry, I smoked you. I need a motion then. Kathy?
I approve them first.
Okay, and then a second? Cara?
Sure.
Okay, and we'll need a roll call.
Lori?
Yes.
Janet? No.
I'm missing.
Mary Louise?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
And Sarah?
Yes.
That's everybody.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so we're up to date with minutes. Next is public comment. We did have one individual who requested to speak, Ms. Orsley LaRoe. I thought I saw her on earlier. Yes.
I am on. I just don't know how to make my camera work.
Okay.
Wait a second. It must be this button. Hold on. Oh my God, I did it. Cool.
Yep.
Hi, ladies. Thank you for letting me speak. I am always grateful for all the good work you guys do. And I wanted to speak about a couple of items that I think are really important. And one is what I believe is the misinformation and misuse of public funds by Pam Geary and Jamie Stevenson to put the fence in at the end of Fairmead Road. As you all know, that's being litigated, and we on the street are pretty horrified at the amount of money the town has spent. I've got the list here. It's a matter of public record. But I want you all to understand that when the town bought Fairmead Road in 1963, there were encroachments into the road, and our research has discovered, and I've talked to all the people that actually used to live in my house, which was owned by a gentleman named H. Ray Norton, who had put in a fence along our property line. So the town bought it with existing encroachments. And if you guys know anything about basic property law, you know if you buy a property with encroachments and you don't address that right away, you don't ever get to address that. And there's another issue that happened, and that is under Connecticut land law, when you have a property line and a road, and Fairmead's technically a public road, it's not used as a public road, but the town owns it. It's operated as a private road, and we've paid for our own plowing. I talked to Bob Maslin about this way back when. You all know who he is, right? You all know Bob Maslin? So I talked to Bob. He had helped my family a lot. And I said, you know, everybody on my side of Fairmead Road seems to use this piece of the road as their yard. And he said, well, under Connecticut law, you're allowed to clear the travel portion, the untraveled portion of the road. And actually, almost everybody in town does that. So let me give you an example. If you drive down, have you all been down Fairmead Road? Super cute street. We love it. You go down Fairmead Road, the right side of the street, starting at the top, has anywhere from 20 to 35 feet of road used as front yard. And everybody on the street, except us, no, everybody on the street, including us, except for our other house at 9 Fairmead, which does have rocks along the road, has used the road as their front yard, which is really allowed. And it's done all over town because the town owns a very big right of way to have a public road that conforms. And then there's usually, you know, a substantially less portion. So I was very disappointed that Pam and Mrs. Stevenson started this campaign against us personally for clearing the road. And I feel that I want to set the record straight. And it was really prompted by a letter that one of you all, and I don't want to name you here on public TV or whatever this is, who wrote a letter saying, oh, well, Tina Orsi's trying to grab parkland. Well, that's actually not true. Under Connecticut land law, when the subdivision was done back in 1928, again, according to Bob Maslin and, you know, about 9 other attorneys that I have gotten involved, we are entitled to access our property from Fairmead Road. And Fairmead Road actually on the town map goes all the way down to the railroads and was owned by an old family friend, Carolyn Voss Geiger. So I'm really familiar with this area. I've grown up in town. My grandparents lived in town. Sorry, there's a lot of noise in the background. You all hear that?
We do. Yes, there's somebody speaking in the background. If you can please put your phones on mute. I hear a gentleman. And Tina, I do want to limit you to approximately five minutes. Just be aware.
Okay, I'll do the best that I can, but I think it's really important, and I'm actually going to ask for Mrs. Gary's resignation because the misuse of public funds, in my opinion, is something that should be handled in a very serious manner. The fence was installed after Mrs. Stevenson called up and pretty much just yelled at me for criticizing her for not wanting to meet with her in my capacity as the role as the head of beautification. Now, that conversation was witnessed by a lot of people, and as you all know, this is going to be coming out in court. But I think it's really important for you all to understand that this was spearheaded by Pam and Jamie. Really, Jamie actually said in a meeting back in March of 18, when I went in and said, what are you putting a fence there for? I've had this property for over 15 years. And she said, well, you've always used it as your front yard. And I said, yes, me and everybody else. I mean, what's the big deal? And they painted me as this, pariah who was, putting trees in the road. By the way, those trees were something I ordered for the town. And we planted them as in my role as beautification on the berm at the train station. And I had all this crap in my front yard because we were renovating the stone walls behind the back of our house, which we did, which the town knew what we were doing. I actually contacted Jeremy to make sure I didn't need a permit. And they said, oh, I'm messing up the front yard. So they really took the facts and massaged them to meet their narrative. This has been typical of this group of people. I'm sure you've heard it before, whether it was when Mrs. Stevenson's daughter supposedly didn't drink and the big letter was circulated around town. And those of us that had children in town and at this party just were pretty horrified at this sort of mischaracterization of facts. So I want to throw it out there that I think you all need a different attorney to advise you, because I have had issues with Curtis Brinkerhoff in the past when Dave Keating was on probation for misrepresentation of facts before I moved to town, but while my family had an interest in properties in Tokenique. I had to sit down with Curtis Brinkerhoff and say, rein in your dogs. He's misrepresenting facts. I had straw buyers go in and had Dave Keating say things. So, a lot of this was, very personal. The other thing I really want to say is, if you don't believe me, believe your town attorney. I have a document here in front of me. I set the town up. They thought I was going to sell my property and would sign away my life. And in the document, let me get my reading glasses.
Okay, and again, we do need to yeah, we can't. Yes, but we don't have.
Hold on. To relinquish our rights to the right of way of Fairmead Road. Well, why would we relinquish our rights if we don't have any, ladies and gentlemen? Gentleman, I think there's one on here. So it says the releaser's lack of vehicular access to and from the Fairmead Road right of way of the asphalt driveway that connects 23 Fairmead Road to the right of way, and any claims that were waived or could have been waived will be waived. And they asked the buyer to waive those rights too. The buyer happened to be an attorney and said, was the town crazy? And the answer is apparently yes. So I need you all to rethink what's happened. And I want you to also to understand that the Parklands development, that building, when it went in, Nancy Glanville, Jewel, do you all remember Nancy Glanville, who was such a lovely gal? She worked hard with the Beautification Commission to reduce the FAR of that building so it wouldn't impact the residents of Fairmead Road. And when that project first went in, we were told, so I'm going on to a different topic now, done with my fence thing. But I really want to point out that I don't know why Parks and Rec isn't up in arms about this project. Fairmead Road has clay soil that doesn't percolate down. This project is a travesty. Craig Flaherty worked on the project for what we call the wedding cake up behind us. And I was actually for that project and worked with Mark DePeckle to help get permits. And I'm so disappointed in the lack of follow through by the town. But we were afforded protections as a neighborhood. We're the most diverse neighborhood in town, from Hispanic to Indian to a same-sex couple, mixed race couple, Native American, you name it, Hispanic families. We have it on Fairmead Road. So you're talking about a diversity of people to live in the town. Well, we have more diversity on Fairmead Road than you'll find anywhere. And I will remind the town that when we had problems with the high school, the selectman stepped in with his group of friends and bought Hummingbird Lane to protect house values. I will remind you that that is really not how zoning is supposed to work. We're all supposed to get equal protections under the law. And as we look at this really very special property that's Selleck's Woods, whether I agree with the development or lack of development there, the town was going to put parking in the front yard of my neighbor's property, Manny Passumarty. I mean, it's really shocking. So as you all go through this, and I'm going to be writing a letter to the paper asking for Miss Gary's resignation, and I am going to contact Hartford about her misuse of funds, which is a federal offense. And I really think you all should take this seriously. I see Pam is, hold on, let me put on my reading glasses, smirking. Pam, you shouldn't smirk. You got suckered into this by Jamie Stevenson, and you have spent tens of thousands of dollars over a fence because you all were mad at me because I called Jamie a chicken. That is nonsense. And you know what? I was standing in the land surveyor's office who told me that Fairmead Road in its present configuration has been there since 1928. That fence, which you told people I put in, is complete hogwash. It was put in by my Elsa Harrington's son in 1971. It has been there for 50 years. Now, when I cleared out the untraveled portion of the road, we added sections to it. And we also did the town a big favor because Parks and Rec, your predecessor, told us that Fairmead Road was a private road and gave us permission to clear out a lot of invasives that were down there at the end of Fairmead Road. And we took out tires and wires. So I think your mischaracterization of this is just shameful. And I think that you are not a credit to this town at all. And I am personally just saying to you ladies that this is not a trustworthy person, and she has really not protected our parks because Parks and Rec has not even asked for an environmental study for this new building on Parklands. That building will be, it's 35 feet high without the basement and without the roof, which makes it 35, 45, 47, 57, almost 60 feet high in a residential neighborhood. It's 90% lot coverage, except for the pre-existing conservation easements. How is that good with all the runoff that's going to happen? Because this quote permeable driveway that's been designed is not going to work on clay soil. I myself have just spent over $10,000 adding drainage to my front yard from the wedding cake that's up behind us, which is what we call the senior living facility. Never mind that we have end of life seniors. Don't we care about those people? So I know, Ms. Bora, that you want me to stop because it's been probably more than 5 minutes and I can't be verbose, but I feel very strongly about this. And I think this shameful mischaracterization of what's going on has been a complete smear campaign. And I've been approached by a lot of people in town who have given me a lot of support. There's a lot of people in town who are paying for my lawsuit. They're really disgusted at what's happened. And I'm sorry the court date was postponed, but I just feel you should have some basic facts. You know, it's not like I went out and cut down trees. In fact, Pam threatened to cut down the trees that I planted along the residential side of the fence because we had a lot of invasives there. We had burning bush and all sorts of crap that is not appropriate. So we pulled that out and sort of 2 years later replanted it. And I was away and I got an email from Pam while we were in litigation saying, oh, Mrs. LaRoe, you can't plant trees there. I'm going to cut them down. So, I mean, disingenuous to the nth degree. So thank you for listening to me. I hope you take this to heart. It's been a really sad day for someone who's been in town for really my whole life to see this nonsense happening and this bad behavior normalized. That we have bullies in town and now we have bullies in town hall, and it's really just a shame. Thank you, ladies, very much.
Okay, thank you for joining us this evening.
Stay on.
Adele, yes?
Hi, Lori. Just to the mundane, thank you. I just wanted to let everybody know that the RTM is in the process of reconstituting they've just reconstituted the committees, and the committees will be having their organizational meetings shortly, which is a long-winded way of saying that we probably won't have a report tonight as y'all discuss the budget, but I would expect that probably there will be one in December. That's
Okay.
it.
Okay, Adele, can you just share, are there any other membership changes other than the one already noted this evening?
Vincent Argenbaugh, which is name I'm probably mispronouncing, and Chris Noonan, and one of our members moved to a different. Well, we had one that joined you, and then we have one that's moved on to another. Lindsay Kelly is now on another RTM committee. So, but yes, we have two new members, Vincent and Chris.
Okay, great, thank you. Yes, and Cara joined us, so there we go. Okay, is there any other public comment?
I just wanted to say, if you all have any questions, and I know this isn't the forum, but feel free to reach out to me. And I'm working with almost 6 different attorneys are volunteering their time because they're so disgusted. So I will give you access to the attorneys, except for Miss Geary, and anything that you hear from them has to be confidential. But you will recognize all their names, and they are all, one of them said to me, I cannot help you with Mrs. Stevenson in town because I'll never do any work. When she leaves, I will help you publicly. So that is the kind of situation I've been facing in town. So as I say, if you want to speak to them without Mrs. Geary present, I can arrange that, or Miss Geary, whatever you are. Okay? Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Okay, it does appear that our new First Selectman, Monica McNally, has joined us. So Monica, welcome. She's on mute, but I did, oh, she's off mute. There she is.
Thank you. So happy to see all of your faces. Thank you
Thanks,
for
Monica.
working on this fantastic committee. Interested to hear what else you have to say for your meeting tonight.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us and listening in.
Absolutely.
All right. All right. The next part of the agenda, which will lead into our budget discussion later, is a debrief of the park walking tour and key takeaways. Clearly, we had some stuff, the key items listed in the minutes, but I just wanted to make sure we had a chance to chat a little bit, more, because it was a full morning. First of all, I appreciate all of you bearing with me and slogging through in the pouring rain. I will admit it was raining a little harder than I expected, but I'm actually glad we really did press ahead with it because it is hard to get everybody scheduled. We have the whole commission represented and quite a few members of Adele's committee. So although we didn't have the best weather compared to some other years, we did get through it. So thank you all for making the effort to be there. I thought we would just take a quick run through on the park. Parks talk about key takeaways. Please remember you all have your forms to fill out for each park, plus a couple additional parks you're each assigned to. We'd really like to get those in and have that input before we finalize our vote on the budget during the December meeting. So if you can please get those to Cara so she can assemble them, that would be great. Did you find mine?
I'm going to go down to the other mailbox first thing in the morning. I'm sure it's there. So no worries.
Okay. I just went by the address on the report. So we'll touch base on that later as well. Okay, good. So we started out at Cherry Lawn. Key topics as noted in the minutes were the playground, possibly surfacing the parking lot. Pam suggested, something to consider is reworking the driveway access so it's a one-way in and out because of the congestion that can happen with pickups and drop-offs for sports, etc. We are hitting capacity in terms of the nature center, and they've asked to rent spaces in the overflow lot on a more regular basis, which of course would mean they aren't available for townspeople. So that's something we're going to need to keep an eye on. Those of you who've been on the commission with me for a few years remember that the Nature Center came to us and Planning and Zoning a few years ago to have their special permit amended because they wanted to run more programs than they were actually, they had already started running more programs than their permit allowed. And the commission did express some concern about the longer term parking impact of that at the time. The P&Z did grant them their approval. So that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on as well. And then we had a wonderful tour by Laura Mosher and Jimmy Ma, who really pointed out the significant challenge we're facing with the invasive species around the perimeter of the property and the need to address those to protect our tree canopy. So those were the highlights, but again, just open up for a few minutes for other takeaways, things that people as they reflected on the day and things they saw that you might want to put out there, because this will lead into our discussion of the budget. So added comments or thoughts on Cherry Lawn?
Lori?
Susan, yes.
I went back because I've been going back with my dog to Cherry Lawn, and I noticed that the pond, which looked clear during our visit, did have that layer that looked kind of off on it. It wasn't green. It was just very dark, I think. I should have taken a picture, but I was kind of trying to keep up with my dog. But we definitely do need to address doing something there in terms of aeration or something of that nature. The other issue I saw was that the area where the dogs get water, which is shared with the garden club, it's very muddy. So I don't know if we could figure out a solution where we can kind of keep that area, a little cleaner and, the way it's used. So
The ground is muddy or the water's muddy?
the ground is very muddy. I mean, there's bowls there.
Well, I think, Susan, what happens is people sometimes don't shut the water off completely, so it drips and creates somewhat of a puddle.
Yeah, I agree about that, but sometimes you pour the water out a little bit when you don't want your dog drinking from water that maybe so it does get it's dirt, so there's a tendency to get
There's
muddy.
usually a bowl.
Yeah, there's several bowls there. I was there. The other thing I noticed, that we didn't talk about, I think during our tour, was the idea of fencing in that area by this 24-hour area for dogs 7 days a week. That's something to just put out there, that it's we've talked about it. It's been kicked down a little bit, but something to consider if, the commission is interested in doing something like that, especially as the off-leash area is for the rest of the park is limited. So.
Okay, thank you. Pam, could where this water spigot is, could a hole be dug out with a little grate put over it so at least the water would go down and drain and not create a mud puddle?
I'm going to turn my camera off while I talk so it doesn't look so freaky.
Okay, thanks.
But yes, what also has been suggested is a new water fountain that has the regular fountain for adults and kids and humans, and then a water fountain at the bottom that has a bowl that collects water for dogs. So that's something I can price out and take a look at too. That may very well help with that issue.
Okay.
Can I say something, Lori?
Yes, Patty.
Patty, I actually concur with both Susan and Pam. I know that Dorothy from the garden area had talked about and had suggested a water fountain that is on the top and on the bottom, like for the adults and for down below. And so, that might even be an opportunity where we could do a little public-private funding. So I'm just going to throw that out to you from a savings standpoint. The other thing is sometimes it's just the hose that really sprays and it's spraying out of the physical hose itself. So that could be worked on. But the real reason I raised my hand was I also just wanted to concur with Susan, and I actually have photos of the green slime that is on the pond now. So I'm happy to share that with you all at some point and be very happy to try and work on a grant or something for an aerator that's at Tilly Pond. If that's ever an opportunity down the line. And the final thing I'd just like to say is I very much support financial commitment to taking down some of the invasives around the pond. I encourage all of you to go down to Waveney. I was there this week, took a lot of pictures I can send on. They've done such a nice job there. And I know we can do a great, I know we can continue to improve that area, both some of it at our cost, but some of it with volunteer work as well. Thank you so much for your hard work, Pam, and the commission.
Okay, thanks, Patty. Okay, so those are all really, really helpful comments and a number of things to keep in mind as we think about Cherry Lawn and in the budget process. Okay, anything else?
Mine has to do more with a combination of the budget process and Cherry Lawn, but it'd be great if we could set Pam and her team up so each year they can focus on one park with the standards of care and kind of bring that park to those standards of care as close as we can, or at least have a plan now how quickly we can do that. Cherry lawn is so used by so many people in the community, it might be a good place to start.
Okay.
But that takes some additional support from a monetary standpoint for the team, as well as probably some additional volunteer support and maybe staff.
Okay, and that could be a really good way to think about it, because when we think of each of the parks, I think we have to think about really prioritizing to the standards of care, and where we feel we need to get in first, because we can't do it all at once as a commission, as a staff, or whatever, and even with volunteers, it's just an awful lot to bite off. So we're really going to have to think about how and where we want to start and prioritize our efforts. As much as we'd like to see them all, taken care of and shining and beautiful at once, it's probably not a realistic expectation.
That's exactly what I was thinking too, Lori. So.
Okay, good.
And if I could just add a point, as we think about what are the right priorities, I would love to see us do a survey in town. Town's changed so much since the last time the master plan was done. So I appreciate it's not in the budget or scheduled to redo the master plan, but I think we could redo the section around priorities and just get a pulse on where town preferences are.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, any more regarding Cherry Lawn? Okay, great, thank you. I know there's just a lot with Cherry Lawn Park. There's just a lot to bite off. Next, we went over to Woodland Park, and the focus of our time there, we didn't do a full walk through the park this time around. We did have a nice stroll down to the new bridge and boardwalk created by the Eagle Scout, which was fabulous. He did such a great job with his team. And really the bulk of the discussion was the parking area and whether we want to think about, and then it gets down to prioritize resurfacing that lot with some sort of crushed stone or something, and trying to rework it to create additional parking space, and whether that's enough of an issue now to move it to the top of our list, or whether folks think that it's workable for now, and our resources should be spent elsewhere. So I know, Kathy, I think you were going to chat with neighbors, or somebody was going to.
Yeah, I sort of took a poll of some people I know, as well as I run by there in the morning. And in the morning, it's super crowded, and there aren't many parking spaces. There's no question after school drop off. I think on the weekends, it's the same issue, and that causes concern for, that the fact that you probably could use a couple more parking spaces. The neighbors walk in, so they're not necessarily going to use the parking. But I do think there probably is some need from those two times, I think, is when it's crowded the most, and at the end of the day. At the end of the day, I saw less overflow, but on a nice day, it gets more crowded on the weekends, though, too, and then a nice Friday.
So then I think, Pam, the question would be whether by moving those big boulders and maybe moving the posts with the chain across it back, whether a few more parking spaces could be created without much difficulty or expense.
Yes, during construction is going to be giving me an estimate on how they feel they can reorganize the lot.
Okay, great. Okay, because then that could be a quick hit, because then people, you really can't, is Middlesex marked as no parking? I just don't recall.
I believe it is marked as no parking.
It is marked as no parking. They don't really ticket a lot, but it's more of a hazard for the traffic.
Right. So then people would go over, for instance, to Laurel, where some of we park, two of us were on one side of the road, the other was on the other side of the road. The neighbor immediately came out and asked us to please not do that. And I understand why he was saying that. So, but then you have people who are then trying to cross Middlesex Road, and there's no crosswalk, et cetera, which isn't, necessarily ideal. Because people kind of book through there, I think. People are doing drop off to school and heading over to Stanford for, for work or whatever. So, okay. Anything else on Woodland other than that? you know,
I have
it's more of a
something else.
nature preserve.
It's Susan again. I have one more thing. I think it would be great to have an arborist walk through the park, because I know that we do have a bunch of beech trees that probably have the beech leaf disease, and we've had, you know, obviously some branches fall down and some injuries. I think it's the type of park that we should probably have someone professionally go through, maybe once or twice a year, just to kind of assess what's going on and see the condition, if there's any disease going on. I don't know how much that would cost, but I just think it's worth it, because we do have so many trees there and so many of the paths crisscross onto themselves that, you know, there's, you know, that we run the risk of that. So I'd like to see something like that in the budget. And also, I guess correspondingly also, you know, the trails probably need some chips, and I'm going to see if we can figure out a way to see if we could do maybe a service project or something in some of the trails, I think, where there's some roots and other, you know, kind of uneven surfaces. I think we should chip some of the trails again. I don't know if
I
there's
would
any.
love to see a service project, Susan, where we can put up some maps too. I direct so many people in those woods. I think people get lost a lot on some of the back trails. So it'd be great if we could put a map, maybe it's several different places, and it would be a great service project for the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts.
We did have it marked a couple of times, and there is a map, but we don't have it. Once you get into the park, you're like, you know, you could still get turned around, and there are, like, I guess there's some sign, you know, wayfinding markers, so you know, if you know you're on the right trail or something. But that's a great idea. That may be a good enhancement, even if it's an eco project or a service project of some sort. We could talk more offline.
Yeah,
but
that would be
a good opportunity there.
And I know I talked to you about this with you, Pam, but it'd be great if we could get Turtle Pond, as it's called, a little bit cleaned up. It used to be able to where the kids could skate on it in the wintertime. And they could actually kind of, you know, do things. And it's had so many trees that have fallen in through our storms. It'd be nice if we get it cleaned up. You guys have done a tremendous job, though, with each of these storms cleaning up the park. I'm not criticizing you. You've done a tremendous job. We've had so many storms this year, and your teams have always been over there and cleared up all the trails. So thank you. It's just something to think about.
That fell off my list. So thank you for the reminder. And I will reach out to Sandy tomorrow just to give him a heads up to take a look at what they think they may be able to accomplish.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and Jamie, I want to know, I do see Tier and Janet, so they joined. If you pick that up, you got that. Okay, great. Okay, all right. Any more conversation on Woodland? Nope. Okay, I'm scanning faces. Okay, next we headed over to Maguan Park. We were not able to spend time going through the entire park. We did not go into the building this year. We did go in last year. But the focus of the conversation and our visit was really down at the back end of the park. I guess it would be the southwest end of the park where the playground is. And as we've noted in past years, it was built to be an all-inclusive playground. I believe it's our only one in town, and has served us very well. However, it was done with the technology of 20 years ago with those large black tiles, which we see are starting to deteriorate. We've learned over the years in the summer, and we've been told by people using it, is very hot. So probably time to update those. And Pam's feeling is to, rather than put a new surface around the existing equipment, which is also about 20 years old, that it would probably be worthwhile to consider redoing the entire playground. We also all certainly took note of the Federal Realty project, which is right there, you know, very large, and I think we can reasonably expect that it will increase a usage of that playground and the park. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Comments on our visit over to Maguan? No. Everybody's good on that one? That captures it? Okay, great. Okay, then we scooted down to Baker Park, and that's when the rain really opened up. But Again, we were focused over on the playground, and it looks good. The railroad ties were repaired, and it looks much better than it did where they were sort of falling down and whatever. Again, the equipment there is fairly dated, so that's something to keep in mind. We talked about the fact that we do have the swing set from Ox Ridge School in storage and ready to be installed. Pam has proposed putting the money in next year's fiscal budget. I think it was $11,000-12,000. The commission felt that, given the relatively modest amount of money to install equipment that the town already owns and is sitting in storage, that it would be worth asking for the funding now so we could get it installed and have it available for children over the winter, because kids do go to playgrounds in the winter. Unfortunately, that request was turned down by the town administrator, which I was kind of bummed out about. So doesn't look like that equipment will go up. Pam?
And I also met with Sandy, and realistically, it's November 17th. We measured out the area to extend it for them to do the preliminary work in order for this vendor to do the job, but the window's just too short. And so he thinks they can do the preliminary work, but most likely it would have to hold off till August, because there's no way they can handle that in the spring or summer, or spring and early summer. And the timing has just run out now that it's mid-November into December.
Okay. Right,
So
well.
unfortunately, we tried, but either the town looks at getting the $11,000 somewhere, then we could get the project done but as you saw, perhaps I could revisit it with Jen and Kate again.
Okay. I just feel like the equipment is sitting there. It could be enjoyed by the children, especially in the spring when that field is in very heavy use with, baseball families, and they have one child who's playing and somebody wants to take their other child over to use the swing sets or the playground or whatever while they're waiting for their child to practice. So I do feel that I just find that disappointing. So for the record, Darian cannot come up with a few $1,000s to install a pre-owned swing set. So that was really the gist. We did walk down and look at the sign that had been installed for the Eagle Scout project, which looked fantastical. We noted one side was open. Ideally if that could be closed in too. But Susan, I guess you said he's graduated and gone off to college or something.
He's a senior. So I'm going to reach out and see what they can do. But as I mentioned, that whole setup was built off site, so I'm not sure what the material in terms of equipment and tools he has do that with, but I'll touch base with him and get back to you.
Okay, that would be great. Okay. All right. I feel like 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I feel like we're winging our way through the parks right now. And then we finished up. Any more in Baker? I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. Okay. And then we moved down to Pear Tree Point Road to the beach, and we took a look at the boat ramp. We were lucky enough to see a couple boaters in action using the ramp, pulling their boats out, presumably for the season. And we kind of discussed some of the challenges with that ramp and the slope. People were able to see the 2 dinghies that are left there by the freights with our permission that we renew on a 6-month basis, and just kind of get a visual on what that's all about. Certainly that could pose future challenges when we do construction of the ramp at some point. Kind of went over, looked at the beach area that was damaged, and Pam and the crew, well, not Pam personally, but the crew was able to, put back together and repair. And then we spent some time inside the building, the snack bar, quick peek of, did we go in the restrooms or no? I think you opened them up. Did you open them up, Pam? I feel like you did.
We went in.
We did go in. Okay. And also, talked a little bit about, the snack bar operations this summer, what the challenges were, thinking about, ideas for, going forward, whether, again, we want to do another survey to get a better pulse on what's, desired or not there. We know there was not a tremendous amount of demand for snack bar service at Pear Tree. It was a difficult summer overall. I think we had 20 rain days. Just, you know, a lot of different challenges, and it's, you see, it's a closed space in there, so it doesn't lend itself to very elaborate facilities. So others jump in on other key, you know, takeaways and discussion points from our Pear Tree visit. Mary Louise, Cara.
I guess the only other thing that I would add is, since the building committee's work has been put on hold, the question is who's going to take the role in sort of proposing a way forward. And Pear Tree Point Beach has been a town priority since the master plan was put together, and feels like it's starting to move sideways. So I don't know if our new select person is looking for the commission to put together a suggestion about where to move forward, but it'd be just good to know what the plan is.
Yep. Okay, great. And I was going to note it during my sort of chairman's report at the end, but I am scheduled to sit down with Monica in a few weeks, and that will certainly be among sort of the topics that we'll be catching up on. So.
Great.
Okay. All right. So that was a recap of our park tour. I think we got some additional takeaways and items. Jamie, hopefully you kind of jotted those down. If not, we can always read back to the recording. And that leads me into the discussion about creation of commission working groups. And it was a suggestion that came up while we were out on the tour, and it sort of has come up now as people said, gee, there's just so much. How do we prioritize? What do we do? But there is so much here that we do need to find a way to break into, you know, working groups and to tackle a lot of these other issues, because, you know, we talk of them, we go away. I think we need to establish better, you know, takeaways and some timelines about how we're going to tackle some of this stuff to move it forward in a more brisk, you know, fashion. So one suggestion came out, I think, was when we were on the tour, to have more of a, maybe like a sort of a playground committee, and then maybe a separately, you know, committee that works on more the whole issue of the invasives in the different parks, and sort of the grounds would be one way to tackle it. We could have working groups for each of the key parks. We wouldn't have a working group from each of them, but if we want to prioritize the top 2 or 3 parks, and have working groups who really are responsible for sort of everything to do with those parks and how we proceed forward. I don't have any really set view on the best way to organize ourselves, so I really wanted to talk about that for a few minutes. And again, then this will lead into you know, honing in on the operating and the capital budget discussion. So I really want to throw that out there. And of course, I'm looking for everybody's commitment to, you know, raise their hand to, you know, work on one or more of these committees, so we can really drive the, you know, it's really going to take all 9 hands on deck to drive this process, you know, forward, and be meeting during the month and then coming back with reports about, you know, progress and thoughts and ideas. It's just going to take everybody. So I really want to open that up for a discussion of you know, tying it to priorities and how we could, how it would be best to organize ourselves. So I'll throw it open for ideas. Okay, come on.
You know, Lori, there's a big disparity between how much money we allocate towards recreation, be they the playgrounds or upgrading tennis, paddle, whatever, and the beaches, and then basically the parks themselves. The parks seem to always get short shrift from a monetary standpoint. You know, redoing one of the playgrounds is like $250,000, but there's nothing that really is offset on the park piece of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a valid point. And that's probably why we are where we are with Cherry Lawn and the invasives, for instance, because that hasn't been where our focus has been.
Mary Louise, just to kind of respond to that comment, you know, in the time that I've been on the commission, most of those parks that have been improved have been through private monies. So in terms of what the town is given, they haven't put the $250,000 into Wheat Beach or Cherry Lawn. Those were all privately raised. And that's, you know, so I don't think that the natural spaces have gotten a short shrift at all yet. You know, I mean, going forward, we're looking at replacing it for safety use. But none of that's, you know, kind of written in stone in how we're going to go about doing it. So I think we might need to get creative because of, you know, the funding climate we're in. But those are typically what I find easier things to fundraise for with private funding. Like we did the bricks at, you know, Playground by the Sound. I think they, you know, they did something at Cherry Lawn that was the same thing. So it's just that we just haven't spent money on invasives. You're right, because it's kind of one of those things that people don't really
Think about.
Yeah, they don't think about it. They're like, it's green, it's fine, right? So
Right.
I agree with you. I want to see more money spent on fixing those areas because they do have an overall impact in terms of how our tree canopy will, you know, survive and all these other things and our pond health and everything because it's all interrelated. So, but I just wanted to address that. I didn't want you to think that, you know, as a commission, we've been ignoring these areas. It's just that we just come to our attention more recently.
Lori, I like the idea of doing it by a park basis, so we look at the park holistically to Mary Louise and Susan's points. So we look at every part of the park versus having committees for each park about certain topics. I don't know if we'll look at the park at all four corners. So I like that from an organizational standpoint, but I'm still new to the commission compared to the other commissioners, so I'd love to hear the people who have been here much longer than me. So, because you've seen this a much longer time period.
Well, we really haven't broken into subcommittees in the past other than building committees being formed for various projects, whether it was Pear Tree, and that was a separate committee that was appointed by the Board of Selectmen, not the commission. Or at one point, there was a committee that was looking at how to develop the short lane parcel that abuts Wade Beach. So, and then that's a long story I won't get into. So, but we ourselves have sort of worked as a group, but not broken ourselves into smaller working groups for key topics. So it's really, you know, in my tenure anyway, I can't speak past that. So that's why I'm really surfacing now, given that I think we're all feeling, I know I'm feeling that there's just so much to be done. You know, I'm really thinking about, you know, how do we organize ourselves when we only officially meet once a month? It's just not feeling like it's enough to really start moving things forward. We kind of went on some level of hold during the pandemic. You know, we went into, you know, under you know, conversations with Jamie, and certainly early in the pandemic, there was just the uncertainty of what financial impacts were going to be. So it's kind of like everything was like, just, you know, hold on, get through this. Our focus was monitoring park safety and usage, and, you know, we had the parks locked down. So we've come out of that environment now. So it's time to kind of re-energize and think about, you know, getting some of these projects restarted again and prioritizing. And, you know, what we have definitely learned through, you know, the proactive help of Laura, you know, Mosier is, you know, we're going to kill our tree canopy in some of our parks if we don't address this. I think that message was loud and clear.
Right.
And, you know, we have to get on it. And you're right. A lot of us, you know, we're not tree, you know, plant experts, and you walk around the park, and I, you know, to me, I'm always, you know, I've always felt like the back part of Wheat Beach is really messy. It's always really just kind of bugged me that it's just like really messy, but it's the back end of the park, you know, other than those of us who live in the neighborhood, maybe kind of walk back there. But now I know it's more than it's just messy. You know, we're going to lose the trees that are there. So I think this creates a new urgency. But do other people feel that it more a park by park basis as opposed to a topic basis is the way to go?
Hi, Lori, it's Tier.
Hi.
I am on my webcam. My Wi-Fi spotty, so I'm just on audio. I like the idea of doing specific groups such as invasives and playgrounds or trails. I feel like as small groups, the amount of specific knowledge that starts to accumulate would be more helpful. You know, just you know, sort of thinking about like Susan, how you worked on the playground with Weed Beach. Like, you know, certain people have worked on certain projects and can bring so much in depth to that can, you know, that can be you know, transferred to other parks versus thinking of it like just with so many different parts to it. So that's how I feel.
Yeah, there's definitely
I
benefits.
agree, Tier. I think that's the best way to do it, is that way we target kind of the issue we're trying to address, which invasives or playground. And I'm happy to help with, you know, the playground one because of the history I have, having worked on Playground by the Sound. I'm also, I don't mind working on invasives too. Another kind of passion, the gardening, whatever, growing stuff. So if you want to, you know, start those two committees off, just because they're kind of pretty important right now, I'm happy to help on both of those.
Okay, thank you. I mean, we could also, another idea that Jamie Stevenson kind of tossed out to me right before she finished up was, you know, having, you know, members of the commission assigned to each of the parks. Like we would each be like a park, you know, champion or something for one or two parks that, you know, we kind of really committed to keep our eyes on it, visit it regularly, you know, make note of issues in it. We can use, you know, we've got our form now, you know, jot down notes and whatever, to really be thinking about, you know, what's going on at the park to highlight particular challenges. So, you know, we can cross it. I mean, it's not that one is exclusive of the other. You know, so both have, you know, people say, yep, you know, I'm assigned to Weed Beach, I'm assigned to Cherry Lawn. And again, you know, some of them don't need as much as others, like, you know, Freight Park. I mean, what's there to talk about? Freight Park or Stony Brook, you know, possibly, you know, somebody gets over there once every 6 months or something and takes a peek and makes sure there's, you know, nothing egregious going on. So, you know, I'm hearing there's interest at both. So what we're really, you know, if we look at some of the key areas and have working groups that would be then become subject matter experts, I'm hearing playgrounds and invasives were topics we talked a lot about on our tour. That doesn't really exclude the big projects, because, you know, the bigger projects really have to do with having building, you know, or committees appointed by the selectmen. We have to look at that as well, or just major development projects. Those would kind of be separate things. But are there other key areas, or do people feel that those two would really, you know, get us going on some key priorities? Are there other things? You know, there's courts come to mind, or
Lori, Pierre put in the chat that could also do invasives, playgrounds, Weed Beach, and Parakeet Point as we revisit plans there.
Okay. 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 All right. So does that sound good to everybody? That we would have up to 4 working groups for now, and get people. We won't do it now because it'll be time consuming. But if you know, I could hear from everybody in the next few weeks about which areas you'd like to focus on, and then we'll work on, you know, organizing and getting going. That would be awesome. Okay. Okay. All right. Anything else on this topic? I got it. Sounds great. Oh, people are using the chat function. Sorry, I have to do the big scan thing. Okay. Awesome. Righty, then let's move on to the Pam's presentation of the proposed operating budget, which she did send out. And Pam, I think you're going to share it on the screen.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Nice.
Okay, can everybody see that?
Yep. Okay, so Pam, if you could take us through, I don't know, oh, wait a minute. Can you make it bigger? There we go. Okay, take us through, I would say, key lines, and highlight. I don't think we want to go through every single line. In pre-reviewing it with Pam, one thing I had mentioned to her is, I'm a little rusty from my days on the Board of Finance, but I do remember that within the Parks and Rec department, for instance, there's sub-departments. So that's why, when you looked at the expenses, you would see full-time salary like multiple times, and you would see part-time salary multiple times, which I know is confusing. It's because it's really a subgrouping that Pam's, the maintenance crew would be one kind of subgroup within that, and the office staff might be another subgroup. So that repetition, I know when you're looking at it for the first time, can get a little bit, confusing or seems a little weird, but it has to do with the way that the budget and finance system at Town Hall works. So I did want to point that out to you.
Well, I can start with that, just
Okay.
because there are 3 different areas like that, and that is indeed because of the Park and Rec office staff, full-time salary and part-time salaries, and then you have the grounds, full-time salary, part-time salary, seasonal. And then you have beach and court, which is the part-time seasonal salaries with lifeguards and paddle attendants. So that's where those are grouped out. But to make things smooth, the first column is all your revenues. And so one of the most confusing things that could be in this particular fiscal year 23 is the fact that the recent change that I sent out in the last updated budget report is because finance opted to, and I wanted to get that letter from Jen, it didn't come through yet, but they opted to set up 2 funds. They're programming funds. One is for expense and one is for revenue, for all programming accounts, so that we can avoid all that messiness of trying to have to go to all these different select boards to approve these changes, because we had no idea that we would be bringing in the amount of revenue that we were bringing in and expenses, because the more revenue we brought in, the more expenses came in. So they opted to set up these accounts, which brings in this incredible decrease in change of percentage. When you look at, I'm going to bring this over, the Parks and Rec, and I can actually circle it, this program fee. So here you're going to see a enormous decrease in that expense, because that's going to go over into the new programming account. And the proposal is going to be this 36, because that solely is made up of revenue from community events and our kayak vendor that has that small business on Weed Beach. So that brought in $6,000 last year. So we're anticipating that we'll at least get that again, if not a little bit more. So that's why that's bringing in such a big change from fiscal 22 to fiscal year 23. Everybody understand that?
And Cara, I have a question. On our tour, you said that, I think this is what I recall, that this past year there was a charge for using the fields to the soccer and baseball groups and so forth. Is that reflected in this line 6, or is that someplace else?
That is not reflected in this. It is, let me erase that. That is reflected, grab my tool, in facility permits, park facility. So as you'll see in the proposed fiscal year 2023, we've estimated, and remember, this is an estimation. This is based on historical numbers, And in fiscal year 22, we're estimating that it would be 25. We're figuring that the world is opening up, people are renting more, so that's why even though our actual number of 185566, which is the end of June 21, we're anticipating, and again, this is before we had to estimate this way before the final numbers came in, that perhaps will come in around 25. So that's what and this is renting our picnic areas, the sports league fees. It could be miscellaneous parking fees. There are many residents sometimes that ask to use our lot, and we rent out. If we can accommodate that, we will put a charge to that, and that goes in this park facility permit.
Pam, it's me, Janet. I'm just curious, on line 6, back to the program fees, what do you think is accounting for the fairly large increase to 1.1 million in the current year? The 2021 fiscal
Well,
year.
fiscal year 2020, our spring was horrible. We lost a lot of money. And then come the end of summer, we did really well. And come into fiscal 21 that summer, which was July 1st, 2020, we exploded. People were just, I can only say is that we, as a department, responded to the community's need to have more programs. People were busting to get outside. And so we accommodated as much as we could, therefore more programs, more people. So for instance, if we had one class that was typically say 10, well now it was 30. So more revenue was brought in. And then the fall exploded and it continued into the spring of 21. So we would never have been able to predict the amount of money we were able to bring in. So that's the reason why we had to go to so many different boards to explain why we needed more money transferred in for expenses, because we were blindsided too. It was a year that we never had lived through before. But all I can tell you is our department responded in the best way by providing as much as we could for the demands that the public wanted.
So, and Pam, I want to make sure I'm understanding something else correctly and for the benefit of our newer members. If you look at fiscal 19 and maybe 20, I can't remember, and you'll see that the numbers were much smaller. As I recall, then the accounting was yet again different, where that program fee, say of 182,843, was a net amount. The way we used to account it for is we took the revenue, took
That's
out
absolutely
the
correct.
associated expenses, and what we recorded as Park and Rec program fees was the net amount. Somewhere along the line, and I can't remember if it was 20 or 21, the finance department changed the accounting so that in that line we reported the gross revenue, and then down below in expenses we recorded the expenses. So that's another reason I just want to highlight to people that they're seeing that pretty steep trajectory. It's really not an apples to apples comparison. Now it sounds like they're changing the accounting on us yet again, but it doesn't sound like it's going back to the way it was, if I'm understanding you, Pam. It's a little bit different the way they're handling it now.
That's absolutely correct. It used to be under a contra account. So what's highlighted in yellow, the $182,000, was absolutely correct. That was the net amount that, well, it wasn't exactly the net, because we had to keep the contra account held revenues and expenses. So it had to stay, we couldn't give all the money back to the town because we had to continue to operate through it. So we would always give back about $75,000 per season, or up to $150,000. That particular year was $182,000. So yes, the accounting has changed. This is the third time. So that's why it looks so different. Although that 1,100,000 is quite a big number.
So if you had to put all of these accounting changes aside, if we're just talking about gross program revenue based on all the different things we're delivering to the community, can you tell us, approximately what percentage you're budgeting those are going up?
Yes. So I can show you the other form that I had sent you. See if I can switch the screen here. Let's see, without losing it here. Oh, I still have that drawing tool on. So the other screen, shoot, I got to get that drawing tool off. I'm sorry. So the other one here, if I switch to this is showing the revenues and the expenses. And if you put on this, so the proposed, based on the 1,100,000 revenue from 2021, again, an estimate. Do we really feel that we're going to supersede that number, or do we feel as if maybe it will, come down just a bit and we'll stay keeping the amount of programs we have that we're doing well? And we came in saying, okay, we think, maybe 950,000 might be a decent number, with, of course, the total expenditures are coming in at 675, which leads us to a net of 275,000, which would then be transferred into the operating account at the end of the year. So that's our projection on that.
Okay.
Go back
So
to this.
it sounds like, if I'm understanding it, you don't think we might do quite as much as we did when, sort of the back end of the pandemic, when people were definitely staying local and they were looking for things to do and for their kids to do, that we might see some leveling of that as people are out, in the world more, but that you still feel it's created the new demand and an interest in people taking advantage of the types of programming they're offering now that they are aware of them and how much value they're bringing, that you feel that, the majority of that demand will stay. Is that a fair summary?
I think based on that, it's a very good assumption. Again, but people are also traveling more, so it's taking them away, so again, it will be interesting to see how it flushes out, but that's our feeling based on the historical numbers.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Yep.
So as you can, so it makes it a little difficult to, because we had this big change in the accounting, giving us the deficit of 266,000, but we added in the 275 right here, which is, do you see it here? So we added that back in. But if you come down to, anybody have questions on the revenue? I mean, that's really the biggest part of the revenue. You can clearly see the different areas of what we're bringing in. So I think that's pretty self-explanatory. If you come down to the expenses side, our biggest driving budget driver right now, I would say, would be obviously our salaries. There's some increases there with the unions, which is this 38. Security services, as you'll see right there, we decreased it a slight bit because we had changed some hours. We really felt we wanted to see whether or not the beaches needed to have security up until 10 o'clock at night. Our feedback from the security guards was like nothing was happening whatsoever. It was just such a dead time. So we really did look at, okay, let's close Weed Beach at 9, let's close Pear Tree at 8. And it really seemed to work. We had no complaints. It seemed to be very smooth. And so we reduced that just a tad. Let's see. The overtime salary is one of the budget drivers. That is due to some of these extreme storms that brought in an incredible amount. My overtime salary right now in this fiscal period is blown out by $10,000. So I'm going to have to transfer to cover that as you can see in this figure, let's see, actual 21. So if you look at actual here, oops, my tool is off. We were at 28,000 there. But with some of these storms that continue to happen, it's just forcing an incredible amount of overtime. So I think we need to be prepared for that. So I did increase it by 5. That also includes some additional time to help with the community events, because I've gotten lots of feedback during our community events that said, come on, Pam, we have to do better than this. This is all these volunteers trying to hoist tables and chairs and all these heavy things is really too much for some of the volunteers. So we really could use the muscle from our park crew. So I added in, Jamie and I looked at what types of hours would be needed, and that 5,000 also includes a little bit there. Take that away, erase that.
Pam, are there any other additional items that were costs from all the storms? Because one thing I remember we mentioned is, should you have just a line item to help with that maybe would bundle overtime with other additional costs you have? Like, I think you had to replace some equipment, you had to redo a beach.
Well, we did, but Kathy, not to interrupt, but all those expenses, which were quite grand, those were being reported to FEMA, so they never came out of our operating.
Okay.
At all. Whether or not we get those funds, I think we may be getting them, but whether or not we do or don't, it's not affecting my operating budget right now.
Okay. Just something to think about if we don't get them, whether we should plan in the future.
Right. No, I think that's a good idea. Let's see, this 29, this facility repair and maintenance this is a soft number, as you can see here. I put in this 25. I'm waiting for a hard number estimate to come back from a landscaper that I met after we all did the park tour in Cherry Lawn. I met with him again in met with him at Cherry Lawn to reiterate what we all went over. And so I don't speculate that I'm correct on this. I think Lori and I kind of talked a little bit about how expensive it could be on an annual basis. So that's yet to be seen. But that 29.4 is an increase in cleaning vendor fees, and this 25,000 to help maintain and get rid of invasives. So that's another one of the larger budget drivers on there. Oops. As you can see, there's some there's some minor ones. This is a Wi-Fi line at Pear Tree that we put in for $1,200, and an increase in the organic material. As you know, there's a lot of material in this day and age right now that just went through the roof. So, but I'd still say that was pretty minor. I have some additional tree work from storms in here, $2,000. Let's see if there's anything more significant. Increase in paper products, cleaning supplies, again, in this line item, $1,500, which is right here. Oops. I can't get it. Right there, the $1,525, it's not highlighting for whatever reason. I think that's pretty much it. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can see there's a lot that stayed the same, 0% increase. Here you can see that that's the 492 is based on what we felt was the expense part of the programming part. It's hard to see where what line item that is. The proposal is 442. So I think that's, does anybody have any questions? But honestly, because they changed the accounting, this changes, a deficit. It's only because of that new accounting system. But if you think that we should add in something like Kathy's suggestion, we certainly could do that. But I honestly think we should maybe use this year as another year to look at the proposed numbers that we're doing now and see where we end up now that the world, even hopefully we get post-pandemic in 2022 and things are more normal than they were in 2020 and 2021 in order to make better assumptions. But so I think it looks pretty good.
I guess, my thoughts, and Pam and I have chatted about this a little bit, is we're focusing on the standards of care. And, example would be that, there's a lot of chip paint on the Weed Beach Pavilion and Paddle Hut. And, we can notice it, but then it's not in the budget for the year. And then, it turns out it can be, 9 months or a year before we can address it because of the budget cycle. Pam tries to work with the crew to see where they can fill in and do some of the work themselves, but they have so much capacity. At what point do we need to be looking at the on-staff capacity to grow so that we can address these types of things more quickly and not sit with chip paint on our, some of our premier park buildings for a year and a half? It just seems like, some of these things, we notice it, and it's just, as you said, like with, trying to prep the playground to put the equipment in a Baker, you guys just don't have the capacity. So I just think we need to be thinking about how we're going to, balance that at some point and say, Highland Farms was added, which, is not a park, so it's not under this commission's purview, but you and the staff are responsible for it. As there's more needs, there's more whatever, how do we keep taking care of all that with the same number of people? And at what point, I guess we're going to, or at least I'm going to continue to challenge you to think about at what point do we really need to find a way to add capacity or money in the budget so that, some of these ongoing maintenance items, we're not waiting a year and a half.
Right. And I just circled those two numbers. So the last year's fiscal was $85,900 for facility maintenance. And due to the increasing in cleaning vendor fees and the $25,000 invasive issue, it raised that number to $115,300. But within that budget, we do have, like say $7,000 worth of painting, $6,000 worth of emergency electrical. So there are various items that can move from park to park where needed. But yet, Lori, to address what you're saying is that when we're discussing painting an entire facility, that's not in there. That may be to paint the railing or some chipping on the small bathroom, but not for an entire bathhouse or the paddle facility, which would be more like $15,000 for a project. This is more touch-up that's in this.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's my presentation. I hope that that it's more understandable. I take any questions that you might have.
And we do
have some time. We do have some time, a little bit of time. I think that if there was something major that somebody wanted to say, I think we should add this, you can certainly, we may still be able to implement that by the December meeting, but they are really looking to push it up a little bit earlier. So really, this is the time that I think it's pretty solid, actually. I'm very happy with it.
But we'll be voting on it at the December meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Lori, going back into your comment about painting and things like that, the Weed Beach building is, obviously been there for more than 10 years now. And we don't really have like a schedule in place. I know we have that grid that Pam put together for capital projects, but of just kind of wrote like we do for the tennis courts, like after a certain number of years, like a place, especially a building near the beach, is going to show wear.
Right.
And it's just not going to be a touch up. It's going to be like a full paint job. So I think as a commission, and maybe, or even Pam could do this, we need to think about those buildings that need to be on some kind of schedule. Like we used to do that with the sand replenishment. Obviously, we don't do that anymore. But we would say, we're going to do this beach this year, and then in the next year, we'll do the other beach. I just think that that's not what we're seeing in our capital improvement program now. And I think that would address some of those issues, because if we are doing it on a regular basis, we're not going to be doing touch-up paint every other year.
Right.
And
I think that's a great suggestion.
versus a, and it's just going to get worse. It doesn't get better every time you do a little touch-up paint. The building probably, these buildings, some of them that we do own, need a full paint job where it needs to be scraped again and really taken care of. And I think we run into that problem in town if we don't do things like that, just having them on a schedule. So it's kind of a reminder to us that we need to keep up with the properties or the things that we build. So just that's my thought on that.
Yep.
Yeah, great
So,
suggestion.
yeah, I think, yeah, Pam, that would be great if we could just have a list of all of the buildings and, when they were last painted. And then so we can really, you can be thinking about, what would, and then kind of assessing what would be a sort of a reasonable, full, just like we all think about our houses or whatever, how, many years you got to go and just, it's time to paint the house again. And again, there may be some nuances depending on, certainly at Weed Beach, it's much harsher, and we're getting more severe storms and whatever. And I think that's when I noticed it last year, was after one of the big storms, then the paint, it just looked terrible. It just looked terrible all of a sudden. So I was literally, I went down there one day and I was like, when did that happen? So I think we should have an inventory, and it should just be something that we know every 7 years or every, whatever it is, depending on the building and its, location and certainly the materials it's made out of. And we don't have a ton of buildings in our parks. So it's not going to be an exhaustive list. I think that would be a good takeaway to have that and think about whether we need to get this layered into the capital budget.
I agree. And we do already have the 6-year plan. So to add it in the 6-year plan would be the way to do it.
Yep.
And as you and I, Lori, went back in terms of emailing, I did, for the rest of the commissioners, I did reach out to the finance director to talk about the, projects like Pear Tree and Weed Beach, whether or not we should be assuming that those types of large projects would be bonded. And she said, absolutely do not assume that. So that those projects really need to be put in the 6-year plan so that the top administration and the Board of Selectmen can look at the 6 years and say, oh, okay, look at this big number coming here, this 1.9 million or this 3.5 million. And then they can make the decisions of whether that would be a bonded project or not.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It just wasn't feeling comfortable to me that it's just not our role to decide how the town's going to pay for it. It's just so to say this is a project that we support and would like to have it, funded.
Correct. So if everyone's all set, I will stop sharing my
Sorry,
screen.
I was just going to add one more comment. One, I support the tone of this conversation that we need to maintain the facilities that we have, and we need to make sure that we include those expenses in our budget. And I think the standards of care hopefully will be a fact base to help support requests to do facility maintenance and so forth. But I can't not mention Pear Tree Point Beach. It feels like we're looking at still a couple of years before town has a long-term plan for Pear Tree Point Beach, and the painting in the interior made such a difference this summer, and it would be great to see some maintenance or simple landscaping done down in that bathhouse. It makes a huge difference. And I think it's been probably a decade before something's been done down there. And I think it's starting to become a disservice to town if we can't maintain that building a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we could put in some money just for some, some landscaping, some some planters, you know, something to get some either annuals in there or whatever, just to spruce it up.
Yes, I think some landscaping, painting the outside, and then some new fixtures on the inside would go a huge, huge, huge way. And realistically, it seems like we're probably looking at a couple years before there's a sort of formal plan. So it would be nice if it looked closer to the other facilities.
Yep. I mean, it might not be till there's a plan, but it certainly would be till it was fully implemented for sure. Okay, I think I saw some chats pop up.
Yeah, Tier had a comment in the chat.
Yeah.
Hi, I'll talk about it too. So pre-pandemic, Pam and I reached out to Project for Public Spaces, which is an incredible placemaking organization. And we really wanted to work with them, their consultants who would come in to our town and gather the community stakeholders, neighbors, anyone in Darien, as well as town leaders, and help us to formulate a plan for Pear Tree Point. Really like considering all voices. And they are a phenomenal organization. Their proposal was really, really high, but I think that it would be worth it to revisit and to see what they could do to help us out. It was like a 3-part proposal that they gave us, like different types of things that they would do with us. Maybe they could do just one of those things to get us. But I feel like just involving the community in a way that is much more positive and getting the Pear Tree Point back, you know, to a really a positive, collaborative, you know, way would be worth the price.
Tier, I love that suggestion, and I'll check out Project of Public Spaces. I was going to mention along a similar line, I'm on the board of the Trust for Public Land in Connecticut, and they do a lot of similar work, which is participatory design. So that Trust for Public Land builds playgrounds, parks, park facilities for towns across the country. But they do a lot of the same approach, which is involving the community to make sure that needs and preferences are identified and included in the plan. So it could be another avenue to do the same type of work.
That's a great idea.
Will you send around the proposal that Project of Public Spaces shared?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll email that out.
Yeah, this is
I
Sarah.
also think we need to. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. This is to Sarah. I totally agree with Tiara's idea. I mean, I think that at this stage, I feel like we're kind of stuck on Pear Tree, and I don't know what's going to, you know, move us forward. And maybe this, looking back at this and having them come in and doing at least a piece of it would get us going in the right direction. I feel like there's so many good things going on in town, especially with what's going on downtown, that if we can kind of have that momentum and if we're showing goodwill and involving the community, incorporating their thoughts and ideas, I think that would be so positive, because having just been down there, it doesn't look great, you know, and I think that we as a community deserve a prettier space at our beach, and it shouldn't be that hard to accomplish, but I just feel like we just, as a commission, you know, obviously we were halted by the pandemic and everything, but now I think that we need to come up with a plan to move forward. So I agree with Tiara on this one.
I just wanted to add that we did have a very good, lengthy conversation while we were at Pear Tree about doing a statistically valid survey as well that pinpointed solely Pear Tree.
Right, I recall that, and it's just a question of what are we going to do? We all have ideas, but maybe this is something, what we were talking about with having these working groups, that we could, you know, if we had one for Pear Tree,
yes,
that we could work through a lot of this stuff offline and, you know, come to a better consensus and move forward, you know, in a more efficient manner, as opposed to us just once a month kind of batting around ideas.
Yep. Yep.
I think that's the way that we should probably approach it.
Yep, I would agree. There's too much kind of normal business we have to get through that we just can't get into the meat of a lot of these with these once a month meetings. It's just we're just never going to get anywhere. So okay, that sounds like we're all in alignment on that. Okay. Any more conversation on the operating budget, or is that a good segue to flipping into the capital budget? Sounds like that's a yes. Pam, you're going to put that up on the screen?
Yeah, I don't have that available for the screen. The only changes to the capital improvement plan were the tennis and proposed 4 pickleball courts together, which was the $275,000. I know there were some question marks on that. Maguan Playground, I had another vendor come out. Last month, I had $250,000 on that. He came out and gave me $175,000 he felt would be more appropriate for that size playground with a poured-in-place surface. That was reduced from $250 to $175. I had the Woodland parking repairs. I'm still waiting on a hard estimate on that. So I did drop that to 15 because that 20,000 that was originally there was based on paving. And then we had the install irrigation valve at Baker Park. That's 10,000 that stayed in. And we had the install the swing set. I left in there for now because it looks like if our crew can do it, it would be next August. But if we get the approval, we can have it done potentially earlier if we leave the 11,000 in there. And then we had the one new paddle court at Weed Beach, $155,000. That's no surprise. That was in last time. And we had paint the exterior bathhouse for $5,000. And we had a ductless AC in Weed Beach concession for $15,000. So that totals out to $661,000.
And
Pam,
Pam,
could you-
the conversation before, are you going to put in some numbers for Pear Tree Point Beach?
Well, this is for the current capital, not the 6-year plan. I mean, we can certainly put something out. Yep.
Yeah.
Pam, would you clarify the tennis and pickleball courts? Are you talking about converting one tennis court to 4 pickleball courts? Or are you talking about a brand new tennis court and 4 additional courts, or what?
Yes, the contractors that I had come look at the tennis courts were to redo the 3 current tennis courts and adding 4 pickleball courts.
But you'd add the 4 by using one of the existing tennis courts?
No.
This would be a brand new court?
Correct.
I'm not sure we settled on that as a priority for the commission. I think how we left it was that we really wanted to refer back to the master plan, look at possibly other locations. I didn't get the sense that the commission was unified on taking up more grass with court at Cherry.
I think there's too much going on at Cherry Lawn.
So we can settle in at the additional money to just do the tennis courts and post-tension. And we can leave out the pickleball. Matter of fact, Jim Coughlin got a estimate today from the vendor that was responsible for redoing the ones at Weed Beach. And in his professional opinion, the pickleball courts should be separate from the tennis courts, even if they were done at Cherry Lawn. So I think it's safe to say that we all approve the fact that we want the tennis courts to be redone, correct?
That was supposed to be done this year and was in the budget. And my understanding is we couldn't because the prices went so crazy that the budgeted amount wasn't enough. So we need
Correct.
to tack on more to what we were budgeted this year to get it done because of the price, very significant price increases.
Exactly.
So it's
So
redoing
that
It's
the existing
redoing.
tennis courts. Okay.
reconstructing.
And can I ask about the paddle court at Weed Beach? Is that a new paddle court at Weed Beach, and where would that be placed?
An additional, and it's in between two of the existing paddle courts now. Jim had a vendor go down and professionally lay out a plan for that and gave us a estimate of $155.
Okay, and again, I'm not sure we settled as a commission on whether that was a priority or not. I know that we do charge revenues and there would be a payback. What was it, 7 years, I recall, something like that, but I don't know as a commission, or I do know what, let me rephrase the statement. We did not as a commission settle on whether that was a priority or not. No, as opposed to, you know, if we're going to be looking for a massive amount of money to cure the invasives at Cherry Lawn or something, and we realize that we're not going to have an unlimited well, because I think that personally, I think any meaningful work on those invasives is going to be a six-figure number. I've done enough landscaping that I have a pretty good idea what something like that is going to run. So, you know, I'd like input. I know the demand on the paddle is certainly increased, but you know, whether people feel that's a priority for this coming year or not.
I would be more inclined to invest it in the invasive situation and making a real statement there, starting to do something.
Others?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Adele.
Some of the numbers I have on the sheet that I was looking at are really weren't the same as what Pam just said. So I'm wondering particularly about the Maguan playground replacement. I had it was at 225. So maybe if she could send out another sheet that updated numbers would be helpful.
Yeah, Adele, I just presented that to the commission just now, saying that I met with another vendor.
Okay.
And that vendor
That's why it's
professionally
not there.
feels.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. He felt that number could be reduced to 175 for that particular space at Maguan.
Okay.
As you know, you can get a playground with, you know, very little bells and whistles that will cost you $50,000, or you could get all the bells and whistles and the triple height decks for $500,000.
Right. Was that going to include any of sort of the maybe adding swings or something in there? You guys had talked about on the parks tour of maybe making that playground a little bit bigger.
Maguan?
Yeah. No.
That includes poured in place and two additional replacement of each playscape. But certainly, again, like I said, they vary so much in price that we could add whatever, you know, smaller adjustments that we wanted within that number.
Okay. Thank you.
And Pam, do we ever have another conversation with Federal Realty about Maguan Fields?
Not yet.
Okay. Because that could make a difference too if they're willing to sponsor.
Yes. Yep, it's on my list of things to do.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's the feeling about the paddle court for this year's request?
I think we should defer it.
Other?
I agree. I think we should defer it. We have other priorities, I feel like.
I'm married to a diehard paddle player, so I'll probably abstain on this one.
I'm going to ask for more information, which is what I normally do.
Okay.
Which is why, what's the cause for creating a new one? How booked are the current paddle courts, and is there such a demand that you see such an increase in revenue? Is that one of the goals of putting it in, Pam?
Yes, our revenues went up from $57,000 to well over $100,000. So the
And how
use
much?
has,
Jim
How much revenue?
definitely stated that they've gotten very busy. I don't know that I have a good sense of how many people are being turned away and really can't play at all versus can't play at their preferred time. I don't know that we have enough of a sense of that.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for, Lori.
yes, there is a demand that there are many people that cannot play at preferred times because of the demand.
Oh,
Susan?
it's Susan. For the way I feel about the paddle court at Weed Beach, I'd like to see that money used to kind of work on our paths that we're thinking about doing around the whole beach area. Maybe improvements around Short Lane. I mean, I know we're kind of on hold with the foundations, but I feel like those monies could be spent on making some kind of improvements now, and I think that would benefit a larger number of people than the paddle courts would. Because right now, just even looking at that space, I've spent some time down there because of the off-leash dog time now that we have down there, and I just feel like it needs a big cleanup. Even around the junior sailing area, I don't know if that's something we could take on or pay someone to take on in that space, but I'd like to see that. Going back to the pickleball courts at Cherry Lawn, I spend a lot of time up there now in the mornings, and I feel like the area that you were thinking about putting those courts, it gets pretty busy there with dogs running around, and I think even children running around. I'd hate to lose that space around there, just and have it only be pickleball courts, because I feel like if we take that, we'll see a lot more pressure towards the soccer field right there. And, I'm concerned about that. I mean, there is a little bit, you see some activity there with the dogs and people, but I think we're going to see it more so if we take away that other flat space right next to the tennis courts. So that would be my concern. And I think this was already mentioned about Maguan. I really would like to see that be a public-private partnership. So having such a large number on our budget to get approved might not, I'm just not sure that's a good use of what we think is that we could get private funding more easily for. I mean, not more easily, but possibly, I should say. Even if it's not through them, maybe doing another playground campaign geared towards that, maybe having baseball help us, Little League, and all these other groups, tapping into those groups. But I really would like to see Weed Beach, if we had money to finish Weed Beach a little more now, because it's kind of been a long time coming. We bought that property at Short Lane, and it's just sitting there, and there's so much potential there, and we're kind of really stuck on the beach side of things versus that. There's a whole big park there, and we're not utilizing it, and it's a shame. And
Yeah, no, I agree, Pam. I mean, Weed Beach is completely missing from this. And, when Amy and I joined the commission, Jamie Stevenson's one of her top priorities was figuring out what to do with Short Lane. And here we sit many years later, and we went through a lot of iterations and this and that and the other thing. And then Pear Tree jumped in front, and then we got going because we thought we had support from the foundations, which would be great if we can re-energize that. But at the end of the day, it's town property, and we got to figure out how we're going to finish it off. So I do think that's got to be on here, and that's where I don't want to go. I was concerned about, you say, oh, well, it'll be bonded, so we don't want and that we've got to put it on the list because it puts a stake in the ground that this is important to the commission. We've never finished off that parcel, and we need to figure out how to get that done. So,
well, we do have a hard number there from F&B Construction, which is the contractor that Darien Athletic Foundation uses, and that's a 1.9. So we could put the 1.9 in the 6-year plan, regardless whether or not we wanted to all revisit sitting down and trying to reduce that overall number. Whether it was, Susan was on the small little committee we sat with, and at one point we wanted the same type of asphalt pathway that Highland has, because we wanted to be able to see little kids riding their bikes and scootering, and we had wider paths than the Highland Farm path has, but that 1.9 had the asphalt path throughout the entire facility that attached to the boardwalk. And putting that in there would at least give the Board of Selectmen and the top administration an idea of what type of funding we're looking for.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
I would like to see it in there.
In this year, or which means fiscal year 23.
Sure. This thing's been going on for like 8 years. We've been talking about what to do.
I'm good with that. It's whether the commission as a whole is good with that.
But I certainly want to hear from others.
I think that's a great idea, Lori.
I agree, Lori.
Okay, thank you.
Me too.
Jumping on, I concur as well. And I guess to that end, I wonder, I was just looking through the proposal that TR sent around, which looks great, except for the expense. But I wonder if we want to put some money in the budget around placemaking work. And it seems, and I know I'm new to the commission, but it seems like a couple of projects have come up and they've just moved sideways, and maybe we need to start doing some more work up front to define the vision with all of the various stakeholders so we can move Fort Lane, Pear Tree Point Beach, playgrounds forward. And maybe we put some money in for a, what is this called? The placemaking with TR's proposal.
Pam, would that be operating or capital?
It's $100,000. That proposal was $100,000.
Yep.
So I would say that would be.
Probably
it is a
capital.
service, but
I know it's a service, but if it's part of a capital project, that would be an accounting question really for Jen.
right. Well, if the commission is for that, I can shake that out with Jen and either put it in the capital if she feels that's where it should be, and if not, I can stick it in the operating.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, they said that was a very expensive proposal, and I'm not sure that's something we would necessarily go for the whole amount, or maybe there's a piece that I don't have it in front of me, whether there's a piece of it or whatever, but whether some amount of funds should go in for this. And certainly this will, be some of the conversations I want to have with Monica to get her input once she has a few minutes to absorb all of this information, and put some thought around it as well.
As I said, Trust for Public Land does a lot of this work, so I could try to just get a sense of, and they work with a lot of Parks and Rec departments, so I can try to get a sense of, is there a version, a $20,000 version, or what are some other ways to scale this up or down?
Okay, great, thank you. Okay. Other changes, proposed changes to the capital budget? No. Okay. All right, Pam. So you'll update this and get this circulated out to folks, and because we're gonna have to be ready to vote on it in December.
Will do.
Okie dokie. Cool. Okay, thank you. Pam, your director's report.
Let me just search through my papers here. And so one major highlight is that the construction project at Tilly Pond Park is being constructed now. They have finished all the side paths off the main path. They have done day 2 of dredging the small sediment pond. Our guys set up all the sediment fencing, and the material that was pulled out of the sediment pond has been laid in amongst the fencing that surrounds it. They are looking to widen the main middle path to 12 feet, and they're hoping to get that done before our holiday event on November 28th. So they're looking to complete that next week. So that's exciting. For all that would like to know about the dredging material, that material has to be tested. It first has to dry out. So there's 3 big hunks of messy mud, and then it will have to be tested. And if the test comes back fine, then our guys are going to take that material and move it around the park and fill where necessary. And that's if it did not come back tested properly, then we would have to haul it away. So we have to wait for that testing. Let's see. I mentioned that I was currently working with our park crew to see if they could do the preliminary work at Baker. They cannot do it this season, so we're looking to either get it approved in the capital budget to get it done sooner, or they can wait until next summer and try to fit it in. Our park crew has began painting the railings and the doorways of the paddle hut, and this way it would reduce our request for the full amount to be painted in the capital budget. We also, let's see what we have here. I removed the item in the capital replacing the 3-door freezer because I want to make sure I can implement that in the spring for the new concessionaire. So I had removed that out of the capital account. That's about it for highlights to the improvement projects. And I gave you an update on the park crews, what they've been doing for the last 4 weeks, as well as programming. And I put in a small blurb for events that Jamie sent off to me, which is the shop and stroll and an old-fashioned holiday, and the new partnership with the Chamber of Commerce that Jamie has worked on to work with Chamber of Commerce, the Darien Sports Shop, and Parks and Recreation to pull off a wonderful holiday weekend. So for all of you, that is on November 28th, 2 to 4 at Tilly Pond, and then we will race over to the Darien Sports Shop and help them celebrate the Darien tree lighting. And they're also going to be celebrating a lighted menorah that Jamie had purchased for the first time this year. So Jamie, I don't know if you want to speak a little bit more on that. You're a little bit more involved with that than I am.
Specific to the menorah lighting, we're still working through those details, so I don't want to say anything's definite at this point in time, but we definitely have a menorah purchase that will be included in our Tilly decorations, along with like the Christmas tree and the other stuff for the park. And then we're looking to do an actual lighting in addition to the tree lighting during the same night. That's the part that's a little TBD at this point in time, but we're still working on that. We have a group of volunteers willing to assist, so we're going to try to make that happen. And then there's unrelated menorah lighting going on downtown. And so we talked to them, but they kind of want to do their thing since they already planned it. And theirs is a couple of days later. They will be doing a different event on December 1st, but they have already agreed to collaborate with us next year. So it'll be that'll be a really nice addition moving forward as we try to make this like a town-wide celebration. Otherwise, we still, because of COVID, aren't going to allow the children to sit on Santa's lap. So we'll be doing the Santa letter writing stations again, and Santa will actually collect them and take them to the North Pole that night so the kids can watch him take the letters away. And Santa will be again making the effort to write all the kids back since they don't get to talk to him directly. So we're going to be trying to make sure that magic is alive again this year to the best of our ability. So I think that's about it.
All right, thank you, Jamie.
That's it for me too.
Okay, any questions for Pam or Jamie?
I just have one quick thing.
Sure.
I wanted to thank you guys for delineating the area where the dogs can be at Weed Beach. I really like the post and rail fence. That's really well done. My only other comment is that the new signage that you put up, and I think you zip tied it on, it kind of detaches itself very easily because it's too kind of floppy and it's like a sail that doesn't quite get fastened well enough. So I don't know if maybe something harder that maybe could be screwed in. I don't know, some kind of signage, because right now you can't really see it or read it. It's like usually like flopped over or something. So, but other than that, I like that area, that it's so that there's a barrier there now so that it's really clear where the dogs can be and where, they can't. So thank you very much for doing that. It was a great idea.
We will definitely work on the signage. I know we were really rushing to try to get signage put up there. The guys did such a good job by putting the fence up. And then of course we were going, okay, we got to at least get something up. And then of course this week just got by us. So we'll do a better job and get that taken care of.
Yeah, it's been very, very windy too. It's just been really windy, which isn't helping matters any. I mean, even just from here where I am down to the end of the street at the park, is the difference in the wind is incredible. Okay, anything else for the staff? Patty?
I have a quick question for you, Lori, and for Pam and the commission. I know we touched on it, but do you think there's any merit to putting in, we've taken on Highland, right? As you said, even though we're not, it's not a dedicated park. We're doing the fire tower maintenance. We've bought Edgerton, and it's been proposed that Public Works is going to take care of that. But there's a strong chance that could flip to us, perhaps. And then if ultimately we end up acquiring the home on Crimmins and that area, and that becomes more of a flood mitigation area, that will likely fall either between Parks and Rec and Public Works. So I just don't know when you want to throw that out to both the selectmen and the Board of Finance to think about. I know nobody likes to hear we're adding an employee and the insurance and the benefits, but I don't know where that falls in to, because that doesn't really fall into a 6-year capital plan because it's not a project. But how do you start to factor that in down the line under operating? That's my question.
It really is. That's where we have to start thinking about at what point Pam staff hits capacity to maintain the parks at the standards we're looking for and take on this additional stuff. And she's got to think, work on ways to really quantify that need and decide to say, what, we just can't do this anymore with the number of people we have. It's a critical conversation.
And you might get turned down this year, but if it's brought up for discussion, I mean, talk to Jen and Kate, and Monica, and everybody, and start to plant that in because your group is taking on a lot. So, anyways, thank you.
Yes, I will add to that. The police department called me today because their grounds aren't looking as good as they were when our guys were taking care of it. So what happened was we were taking care of the police grounds, but then we got the fire tower included. So we dropped the police department, but they're so kindly, warmly asking us to see if we can possibly do a little bit more. And having Sandy meet with the chief to see what type of work we could help with. Now that we do have a couple more efficient stand-on blowers that certainly help us with time. So I'm certain we could help somewhere, but like you said, each additional property and more work from the staff, we need to consider that at some point.
I think there's a page in the master plan where it has sort of the number of parks, the acreage, and the staff. And I wonder if just we update that from 2016 to show there's been continued growth in the number of parks and acreage that your team takes care of to help support this.
And the other thing we need to think about, which we talked about when we were on the parks tour, is the fact that we know there are hundreds of new housing units coming online in town. You know, we saw it all too well in Maguan. Again, those are homes that don't have backyards. And, you know, it's not too far a stretch, I don't think, to expect that the residents of those properties are going to be, you know, want to use the parks and the beaches. And, you know, that will increase maintenance needs. So I think, you know, just things like, you know, we hear frequently about, you know, garbage, you know, the garbage is overflowing, is not being picked up. Now, personally, to me, I'm like, if there wasn't room in the can for my garbage, I would take it home, but people don't want to do that. So even things like that, we're going to have to be, you know, looking at, you know, do the bathrooms have to be cleaned more often, all of that, but also it's just going to be more, you know, it'll be wear and tear, especially on the bathrooms and the facilities, and we really have to think about that coming online in the next few years, because you know, you're going to hit a point where you're just not going to have enough people. Okay, any more conversation on that? Okay, just a few items, and then we'll be able to wrap up for the evening. I did want to mention, you know, there were some inquiries that I received a few weeks ago about the signs that were popping up in town about, you know, save Selleck's Woods and whatever, and there was a lot of confusion about what those were about. We concluded pretty quickly that they had to do or were put up by individuals, and I don't know who were opposed to that Parklands Drive development. Some of the information in it specific to trees coming down in our park were not correct. There was no proposal to take down trees in Selleck's Woods Park. So I think I shared that information with you and wanted to be clear. Just, you know, for those of you who are getting inquiries or discussions, all of the information, everything the developer has submitted, everything is on the town website and on the P&Z site. So, you know, I encourage you to familiarize yourself with it, or that information. But I just, you know, we did want to clarify that caused some confusion when, you know, we have our own commission members, we're seeing signs around town and they're like, well, what do you know? What are we talking about here? Saving one of our parks? Like, what's happening here? So I think everybody was looped in, but I did want to make sure that you were aware of that. Also, I know I got a few inquiries just before the election season with some frustration about how many of the campaign signs were planted along the edges of our parks. I know Freight Park in particular had something like 50 signs, which, you know, some of you expressed some real frustration with. I did email Wayne Fox to get clarity on, you know, whether those type of political signs are allowed in our public parks or not. I think the trick is they're often along the edge and it's not completely clear whether it's abutting the park or in the park. He did write back to me and said it's really a P&Z issue and he's going to connect with Jeremy and circle back. So I know there was a suggestion that maybe we update our rules to specifically state no signage. You can get into freedom of speech and different things. So I think this is just something, you know, the season has come and gone, the signs are gone, but for next year, I think last year Pam was directed to take some of the signs down. This year she was kind of told now leave them up. So I think it's just best that we get some clarity from Wayne Fox on how to proceed and, you know, whether it is something that could go in our rules or what we enforce or not. So wanted to let you know I'm working on that. I mentioned that I've connected with Monica and we're going to meet in a few weeks. I'm thrilled that she's been here listening to the discussion tonight. I think that'll set the table nicely for that conversation. I'm looking forward to it. And I also wanted to mention, just I think you guys read about, he made the paper that a few weekends ago, Pam and I got a couple inquiries over the weekend about discoloration in Tilly Pond. And I think Patty had seen something or whatever, but anyway, the staff jumped on it, worked with, I think it was the zoning department or public works, and traced it back to some construction work where they were pumping and into a drainage, and it was ending up in the park, and we were able to put a stop to it pretty quickly. So I think that there were some nice articles in the paper. I saw in the Stanford Advocate, and kudos to Pam and the other departments really jumping on that quickly to protect Tilly Pond there. So just if you didn't see that or hear that about it, that was really good. Pam had put out, I think it might have been 2 meetings ago, and I think I meant to mention last time, our commission directory is just all of our contact information for each other, and it's not complete. There's a number of you where there are no phone numbers listed. Those are really handy to have. People have last minute change, like Amy last minute tonight, shot me a text and said, look, I'm really not feeling well, can't make it. Cara, I probably would have texted you and said, put the stuff in your mailbox. And I was like, shoot, I don't have her number. So if you guys could get us those numbers so we could just have a complete roster of everybody, that would be really helpful. And then we'll get it out so that, if there's any just last minute changes or any kind of emergency in the parks, I think you guys should know about, or, over the years of, occasionally stuff has happened, and I'd rather let you guys know about it sooner rather than later. That would be great. Let me check. Tilly Pond. Just one thing, this is not really a report. Pam, I'd like to put on the discussion for some time in the next few months. Maybe we could even go to January. Is that, we've had some requests for people to be able to make reservations on the pickleball court. And right now it's completely first come, first serve. I think it would be helpful, Pam and maybe Jim Coughlin could run with this, to just lay out what we do. We've got paddleball, tennis, and pickleball. And, whether they're only by reservation versus drop-in, just really understand how we allocate the court usage in each of the 3 types of courts, and then kind of understand, well, why do we take reservations for tennis or not pickleball? And just, I think that would be a discussion worth having. And maybe, again, I think after, let's get through the budget and stuff. But I know I would like to understand that, better. And then that would help also think about, revenue opportunities and what could tie into that as well. So I know we've kind of touched on it, and it kind of keeps, coming up. And my husband was it a senior men's thing today? And believe it or not, it came up. So, and he's like, so if you could put that a note to, for after the first of the year. And then lastly, I am very sad to note that Tiara advised Pam and I today that she's going to be stepping off the commission. She's agreed to stay till the end of the year, but she and her family are living in Miami for a few months, taking advantage of people doing remote work, and have decided they like it quite a bit. And I guess she doesn't know when she's coming back. So felt the prudent thing to do would be to step off for now. So I'm personally very disappointed. Tiara's been just a wonderful, energetic member, and it's a big loss. Big loss.
Thank you so much, Lori. I'm so sad to step down. I've just had the best time with everybody, and I've learned so much from all of you, and I, just so proud of Mary Ann, with how much work all the volunteers do, and Pam, how you lead the commission, or how you lead the department. So it's been an honor to be on this commission, and I hope to stay in touch with everybody, and also see you next month.
Yep. So Tiara's agreed to stay on through the end of the year so we could get through the budget process, because I really appreciate her insights. And that will also help. And, we'll get official notice out there, and then have to start the process of finding a replacement. Gee, I think we were at full capacity for 2 meetings. Yikes. So anyway, but I did want to share that with all of you. So that's all I've got for tonight. It's been a good, lot of good discussion, and Unless anybody has anything else, did we skip over new business? I think I always skip over new business. Is there any new business that people would like to make a motion to go into? No, good. Usually by this point, I've now been staring at this thing for 8, 12, 14 hours, so kind of losing it.
I'm moving.
We move on. Okay, thank you, Kathy. All right. All right, can I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, okay. And Jamie, you have to get us all to say yes, we'd like to turn our computers off now. And I'm a definite yes.
Lori, great. Cara? I don't think we lost Janet a little while ago.
Yes, I saw that.
Susan?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sierra?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you too, Lori.
Thank you, Lori.
Back with
Lori,
family
you too.
again.
Have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
All right, thank
Happy
you.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
All right, and Cara, let me know that you find my folder.
I'm gonna go tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Bye.